Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into something gentle, a story that smells faintly of salt water and carries the hush of twilight. You're standing on a quiet shore where the tide breathes in and out like a sleeper, and the sky is melting into lavender. It's one of those evenings when the world feels as though it's holding its breath just for you. And sure, you probably won't survive this, though, in this case, survival just means staying awake until the end. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always oddly soothing to see listeners all across the world nodding off together like a scattered little village. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.
The evening is still, and you wander barefoot along the sand, your old fishing nets trailing at your side. The ropes are frayed, patched so many times they look like a quilt stitched by the sea itself. The catch has been poor for weeks, and your stomach hums louder than the waves. There's nothing glamorous about fishing. It's wet socks, tangled ropes, and the occasional crab with a grudge. But tonight, for some reason, you keep walking, as though the horizon has whispered your name. The shoreline curves around like a lazy arm, and the rocks glisten with seaweed that looks suspiciously like someone spilled green noodles across the shore. You drag the boat into the water, its hull groaning like an old man who's seen too many sunrises, and push off with a lone pole. Out here, the sea feels endless, but it also feels empty, as if the fish themselves have gone on strike. Maybe they formed a union. Maybe they're hiding in some underwater tavern, laughing at your efforts. Either way, your nets come back light, and the moon starts climbing, pale and watchful. A little historical aside, fishermen villages like this have existed on every coastline for thousands of years, from Japan's Ama divers who braved cold waters for pearls, to Greek islanders setting nets much like yours. Folklore often paints the fisherman as the eternal dreamer, half poor, half poet, staring into the sea and waiting for something miraculous to surface. And honestly, the miracle was rarely fish. You tie your net to a post and sigh, watching the tide creep around the boat. The horizon is brushed with a faint blush of stars. There's a joke among the old sailors. When the fish don't bite, maybe it's your stories they're avoiding. You wonder if you've bored even the sea itself. But then, you pause. The water isn't only moving, it's glowing. Just faintly, like someone hid a lantern beneath the surface. You blink, thinking maybe it's the moon playing tricks, but the shimmer pulses, steady and alive, not a reflection. Folklorists debate endlessly about these moments in stories. Is it chance, divine favor, or the restless hand of fate? Some claim a fisherman only finds wonder when he's desperate enough to notice it. Others argue the sea simply offers gifts now and then, without reason, the way a cat drops a feather at your feet. Scholars still can't agree, but as you lean over the gunwale tonight, you're not thinking of debates. You're thinking you've either lost your mind or stumbled into something meant for no one else. The glow deepens, green and silver, like a star that fell into the waves and decided to hum instead of burn. It's faint, but you swear you can hear it, like a note held low and long. Your heart thumps louder than the water lapping at the hull. For a moment, you hesitate. The sea is full of oddities, strange fish, drifting jellyfish, and occasionally things you'd rather not name. But this feels different. This feels like the sea itself has decided you deserve something more than empty nets and patched ropes. You grip the edge of the boat, the salt biting your palms, and lean closer. The glow trembles as if aware of your breath. Maybe tonight, the ocean finally answers.
The shimmer beneath the waves doesn't fade. If anything, it steadies, glowing with the patience of something that knows you'll come closer eventually. You lean over the edge, squinting, trying to make sense of the light. It isn't a trick of the moon, too steady for that. And it isn't a lantern, unless someone left theirs lit, tied to a very cooperative fish. The water carries a low hum, so faint you wonder if it's just your own ears filling in the silence. But the note seems to thread through your chest, the way music sometimes vibrates in the floorboards of a tavern. It's not loud, not commanding, just an invitation. You dip your hand into the sea. The water is cool, a little sharper than you expect, like the first sip of a drink with too much ice. The glow shifts toward your fingers. That's when your brain throws in a reminder: most glowing things in the ocean sting, bite, or regretfully digest you. Lanternfish, jellyfish, mysterious floating blobs, you've heard the stories. You imagine returning to shore with both hands bandaged, explaining to your neighbors that you lost the fight against a particularly sparkly clam. But still, you don't pull back. The truth is, you're too tired, too stubborn, and maybe just foolish enough to chase beauty over safety. You reach for your net, lowering it into the water with a slow, careful hand. The ropes slip past your palm, whispering with the wet weight of salt and hope. Historical fact. In many old coastal communities, pearls were considered more than treasure. They were omens. Chinese legends speak of dragon kings who guarded luminous pearls, symbols of wisdom and rain. In Japan, pearls were linked with tears of mermaids, of gods, of women waiting endlessly for sailors. And across Europe, pearls were whispered about as stones of sorrow or luck, depending on who you asked. What's consistent in all these stories is their strangeness. Pearls never appear casually. They're always wrapped in myth. The net dips beneath the glowing patch. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. You feel silly dangling rope at empty sea. Then a weight, gentle but certain, pulls the net down. You tug, and the glow rises, swaying like a lantern bobbing in water. Slowly, carefully, you draw it in. At last, the net breaks the surface, dripping silver beads that look like liquid stars. And in its center, cradled in worn rope, rests a pearl larger than your palm. It glows faintly, not from reflected light, but from something within. And stranger still, it hums. A single, trembling note, soft as a lullaby hummed to a child in the dark. You sit back hard, the boat rocking. The pearl's hum seems to vibrate through the air, through your bones, through the night itself. It isn't words, it doesn't need words. The sound carries a feeling, as though the sea itself is relieved, like you've stumbled into a long-awaited appointment. And of course your first thought is, great, now my catch can sing, but I still can't afford bread. The pearl glimmers in your palm, warm despite the night air. You tilt it, expecting the glow to shift like firelight, but it doesn't. It shines steadily, as if aware of your gaze. The hum rises faintly, a note of curiosity, or is it approval? Hard to say. A quirky tidbit. Folklorists sometimes argue whether singing pearls are a metaphor for echo shells, the ones you press to your ear to hear the sea. Some say the whole idea was born from that illusion, an explanation for why nature seems to speak. Others reject that completely, pointing out how consistently pearls with voices appear in myths across Asia and Europe. Maybe the ancients knew something we've forgotten. The boat drifts as you sit, stunned. Above you the moon hangs, silent witness. The pearl hums on, patient, as though waiting for you to answer. You clear your throat, feeling ridiculous, and murmur, "Well, hello?" The pearl doesn't reply, not in words, but the hum deepens, steady and sure, as if your voice has been acknowledged. You laugh quietly to yourself, shaking your head. The sea has never given you much, but tonight it has offered something that sings back. The waves lap against the hull, rocking you gently, and you find yourself smiling for the first time in days. Whatever this pearl is, whatever it means, it feels less like a burden and more like a beginning. The pearl rests in your palm, glowing faintly like a candle cupped against the wind. Its hum is no louder than breath, yet the sound threads through everything, the night air, the quiet water, even your heartbeat. It's not a song you could whistle or write down, but it pulls at something inside you, the way an old melody stirs up a memory you never realized you had. You set the pearl on the seat beside you. The glow spreads across the boat, softening the rough edges of the wood, turning frayed ropes into silver cords, and making the puddles at your feet look like pools of moonlight. If you were a painter, you'd call it impossible. If you were a priest, you'd call it sacred. But you're a fisherman, so you call it, well, weird, but maybe worth something. The pearl hums again, slightly louder. It almost sounds like a voice trying to form words, though the syllables never quite arrive. You lean closer, tilting your ear, half expecting to hear your own name whispered. Instead, the tone shifts. Higher now, gentle and rising, like a lullaby. You blink, suddenly drowsy, your hands slackening around the oar. 3 thoughts tumble through your head as the sound drifts around you. 1, this pearl could probably get you thrown out of church. 2, you could charge the neighbor's admission to hear it, and finally fix that leaky roof. And 3, you really, really should not be falling asleep in a rocking boat in the middle of the night. But the song presses on, tender and insistent. Your eyelids drop, the stars above smear into ribbons. For a moment, you swear you can see shapes in the sound itself, patterns moving like fish beneath water. Folkloric fact: in ancient Greek tales, Orpheus was said to charm even stones with his music. Some scholars suggest that myths of singing treasures grew from the same idea, objects infused with song, resonating with the world's hidden harmonies. Yet other researchers argued that this was simply a poetic way of describing seashell acoustics or wind instruments. The debate hasn't ended, though everyone agrees one thing: music has always been tied to mystery. You run a hand over your face, trying to shake the sleep away, but the pearl keeps pulling you toward dreams. A strange thought crosses your mind. What if this thing isn't just singing at you? What if it's tuning you, like a lute string being tightened? The boat creaks under your shifting weight. You tuck the pearl carefully into the fold of your net, hoping the ropes will cradle it without dimming the glow. Immediately, the humming deepens, as though the pearl approves. Your boat now looks like it's carrying a lantern made of the moon's marrow. Quirky tidbit: some sailors used to believe pearls weren't made by oysters at all, but by lightning striking the sea, trapping a fragment of sky. Others insisted they were tears of drowned maidens, polished smooth by tides. Strange theories, yes, But when you're sitting here listening to one hum like a lullaby, you begin to wonder if any explanation is truly stranger than the reality in your hands. You run a hand over your face, trying to shake the sleep away. But the pearl keeps pulling you toward dreams. A strange thought crosses your mind. What if this thing isn't just singing at you? What if it's tuning you, like a lute string being tightened? The boat creaks under your shifting weight. All right, little singer, you and me, we'll figure out what you are. The pearl answers with a gentle pulse of light, like a heartbeat against the dark. The sea is silent around you, holding its breath. For the first time in weeks, you don't mind the empty nets. Tonight, you've caught something far stranger than fish. And something tells you, you won't be sleeping in your own bed for a while.
By dawn, word has already spread. Your village, a cluster of weathered huts clinging to the shoreline, has the gossip system of a beehive, fast, buzzing, and annoyingly thorough. You've barely tied up your boat before a handful of neighbors shuffle over, eyes narrowed, pretending they're just out for a morning stroll. Nobody takes a morning stroll at this hour. You clutch the pearl in its bundle of netting, trying to look casual, which is hard when your hands are glowing like a lantern. The hum is quieter now, almost shy, as though it knows it's being overheard. "Catch anything?" one fisherman asks, eyeing the net. You know he doesn't mean fish. "Couple of stubborn crabs," you answer, though the pearl's light betrays you. The man squints, unimpressed. Villagers are like cats, too curious to ignore something shiny, too proud to admit they want it. By midday, you can feel the whispers circling. Some neighbors peer at you with wide-eyed wonder, as though you've been chosen by the sea. Others glare, convinced you've stolen something meant for all. A few mutter that glowing things have never brought anyone peace. And of course, there's the one man who insists loudly that pearls that sing are obviously bad for digestion. You decide not to ask how he came to that conclusion. Historical aside, envy has always clung to rare treasures like barnacles to a hull. In medieval Europe, laws called sumptuary codes actually limited who could wear pearls. Mostly nobles, not fishermen. And in many coastal cultures, tales describe how a single strange find, an amber stone, a giant shell, a gem spat up by the tide, could turn a village against itself faster than spoiled wine. The pearl hums on, soft and steady, as though unaware or uncaring of the fuss. You carry it carefully through the narrow lanes, passing doorways where people pause their chores just long enough to pretend they aren't staring. That evening, as you sit outside mending a net, a small group gathers. Some ask politely to see it, others hint at sharing it, as though a song could be divided like bread. A few argue openly. Treasures belong to the sea, not to one man. And of course, there's the one man who insists loudly that pearls that sing are obviously bad for digestion. You decide not to ask how he came to that conclusion. The pearl glows brighter when you hold it, dimmer when you pass it around. A woman gasps softly when the hum deepens in her hands, then frowns again when it fades. The villagers murmur, "Does it choose who to sing for, or are you just lucky?" Folklorists can't quite agree on the role of such objects in old tales. Some say they were always blessings, meant to uplift communities. Others insist they were tests, designed to reveal envy, greed, or division. And then there are the scholars who shrug and say, maybe people just liked shiny things. You tuck the pearl close again, feeling the weight of every gaze. It isn't heavy, not physically, but suddenly your shoulders ache under its invisible burden. You never asked for this. You only wanted fish. Later, as night settles and the waves hush against the shore,
You sit alone with the pearl in your lap. Its glow washes over your hands, turning your calluses silver. You whisper to it, half in jest, "I hope you're worth all this trouble." The pearl hums back, steady and calm, like an old friend who doesn't bother with words. And you wonder, not for the first time, whether you have found a treasure or whether it has found you.
The next morning, a merchant arrives, boots crunching on the sand like he's walking on coins instead of pebbles. He's the sort who smells faintly of spices and smugness, his beard trimmed to a point sharp enough to spear a shrimp. He wastes no time with pleasantries. His eyes flick straight to the bundle under your arm, where the pearl's faint glow leaks through the netting like a candle under thin cloth. "Word travels fast," he says, smiling the way sharks smile in bedtime stories. "They say you've caught a treasure." You shrug, trying for casual, though. Your neighbors hover in the background like gulls circling a fish. "Just something the sea coughed up." The merchant chuckles, pulling a pouch from his belt. He opens it with a practiced flick, and silver coins gleam inside. The sound is sharp, metallic, almost vulgar compared to the pearl's gentle hum. How fortunate, and how sellable. This could buy you a roof without leaks, a boat without holes, and perhaps even shoes without toes sticking through. It's tempting, more tempting than you want to admit. Your boat really does creak like a grandfather with arthritis, and your roof does drip with every rain. You imagine a table spread with food that isn't just fish and bread. But the pearl, nestled against your chest, hums softly, as if it hears the offer and disapproves. A quick fact: pearls have always been tied to trade. In the Roman Empire, they were worth more than gold, and Julius Caesar once passed a law limiting who could wear them. Some historians claim entire naval battles were waged to secure pearl-rich coasts. And yet, strangely, many myths warn against selling such finds. Tales where wealth comes easily, but peace is stolen away. The merchant leans closer, his voice oily smooth. "Think of your village. Think of the burden lifted. One man cannot keep a treasure that belongs to all." He jingles the coins again, as though silver can sing louder than the pearl. And here's the crooky part. You almost laugh, because the merchant's pouch jingles in a rhythm not unlike the pearl's hum, except where the pearl soothes, the coins jangle like teeth chattering in the cold. It's as if the sea itself is playing a duet with greed, and greed is wildly out of tune. You clear your throat, stalling. You say, "Funny thing, if it sings, how do you plan to keep it quiet? Wrap it in cheesecloth?" A ripple of chuckles runs through the villagers. The merchant's smile tightens. "He has ways," he says flatly. And that's when you know, this isn't just about trade. He doesn't want the pearl for its beauty or its hum. He wants to silence it, own it, make it less than what it is. Folklorists still argue whether these temptation figures in old tales were meant as cautionary villains or simply as reflections of human nature. Was the greedy merchant always a villain, or was he just the mirror held up to the hero, asking, "What would you do?" The pearl hums again, louder now, and the villagers step back, murmuring. The sound is clear, gentle, but undeniably firm, like the sea reminding everyone who really holds the power. You tighten the net around it, lifting your chin. Not for sale. The merchant narrows his eyes, snaps the pouch shut, and turns on his heel. His boots crunch back up the path, coins rattling like a storm of angry insects. Behind you, the villagers buzz again, some impressed, some disappointed, some angry, but you hold the pearl close, and its glow steadies, warming your hands. You can't explain it, not even to yourself, but refusing the offer feels like breathing clean air after days of smoke. You whisper, so only the pearl can hear, Looks like you're staying with me, singer." The pearl hums low and satisfied, as though it knew your answer before you did.
That night, the village grows quiet, but your sleep does not. You curl beneath your patched blanket, the pearl resting close by in a bowl, glowing like a coal that never cools. Its song begins softly, no louder than a sigh, yet once again it seeps into your dreams. You drift into visions not of the familiar shore, but of a sea you've never sailed, a sea vast and endless, its waves stitched with silver threads. Shapes move below, enormous and slow, like shadows of mountains gliding underwater. The pearl's hum becomes a chorus, and for a moment you swear you hear words, not in any language you know, but in something older, like the ocean teaching its secrets to the moon. And then, as dreams often do, things get strange. Your boat is floating not on waves, but in the middle of a vast dining table. Platters of fish swim themselves onto plates. Crabs pour wine from their own shells. A clam politely clears its throat to ask if you'll be trying the oysters. You wake with a snort, laughing to yourself. Apparently, even enchanted pearls can't cure a fisherman's obsession with food. Historical fact, many sailors believed dreams at sea were messages. Polynesian navigators trusted them as guidance from ancestors. Norse sagas speak of seers who dreamed of whales before voyages, treating it as a warning of storms. Scholars still argue whether these tales were superstition or a way to make sense of the subconscious in a dangerous life. Either way, when you wake from such a dream, it's hard not to look at the horizon differently. The pearl sits calmly in the bowl, glowing steady, innocent, as though it had nothing to do with your banquet of fish waiters, but you feel its song still vibrating faintly in your ribs. Quirky tidbit: in certain Persian folktales, pearls are said to be the crystallized dreams of sea creatures, formed not just from sand, but from longings that harden into gems. If that's true, then perhaps what you saw was the pearl showing you where it came from. Or maybe it just has a very odd sense of humor. You drag a hand across your face and mutter, "Next time, dream me up a bakery with cake." The pearl glows faintly brighter, as though amused, which is unsettling because you're not sure if it's laughing with you or at you. By the second night, the visions deepen. You see ruins beneath the sea, columns wrapped in coral, archways swallowed by sand. A figure hovers near them, pale and shimmering, but always just out of reach. The pearl song rises when the figure turns, though you never see its face. You wake with salt on your lips and the strange certainty that the dream is not finished. Your neighbors notice the change in you. You yawn more, stare off mid-conversation, drop your nets with distracted clumsiness. "Lack of fish," you mutter as an excuse, though a few villagers glance at the glow in your hut and whisper that maybe the pearl is feeding on your sleep. Still, when night falls, you curl close to it again. Part of you fears the dreams. A larger part aches for them, as though the pearl is tugging you somewhere you're supposed to go. And when the hum begins again, soft and slow, you let it carry you under.
The third night arrives, and so does a traveler. She's bent with age, wrapped in a cloak that looks like it's been stitched together from sails and shadows. She warms her hands by the fire outside your hut, though you notice she never once glances at the flames. Her eyes are fixed instead on the pearl, glowing faintly in its bowl. "You've brought home a singer," she says at last, her voice creaking like driftwood. You raise an eyebrow. Most people just call it a glowing rock that hums. She chuckles, showing only 2 teeth, both sharp enough to slice an apple. Names are easy. Warnings are harder. The villagers hover nearby, whispering, pretending they aren't eavesdropping.
You offer the old woman a cup of broth. She ignores it. Instead, she reaches out her gnarled hand, not to touch the pearl, but to hover her palm just above it. The glow flickers, and the hum sharpens into something mournful, like a note struck on a cracked bell. Fact, in many traditions, wandering women, sometimes called crones, sometimes sibyls, sometimes witches, were thought to carry secret knowledge of the sea. Greek myth speaks of the Graii, sisters who shared a single eye and saw fate. Slavic folklore has Baba Yaga, who arrives both as helper and terror. Folklorists debate whether such figures were feared storytellers or keepers of practical knowledge, like midwives and healers disguised in myth. The old woman leans close, whispering so only you can hear. A pearl that sings carries more than song. It binds what was lost, and it calls for what is due. You blink. That's delightfully vague. She smiles, unbothered. Keep it too long, and its tune will sour. The sea does not lend without expecting return. One of the neighbors snorts. It's just a rock. If it's cursed, let him keep the curse. The old woman doesn't even turn to him. Would you tie a storm to your roof beam and sleep beneath it? That shuts him up. You shift uneasily, watching the pearl glow against her shadowed face. The hum hasn't stopped. It's low now, like a lullaby sung through clenched teeth. Quirky tidbit. In certain Malay legends, pearls were said to hold the trapped spirits of drowned sailors, their songs only heard by those destined to meet them. Scholars argue about whether this reflects grief rituals or simply explains why pearls seemed alive in their glow. But to you, sitting here tonight, it feels less like theory and more like truth. The woman straightens, pulling her cloak tight. Beware the song. A gift can soothe, but it can also drown. You open your mouth to ask more, but she's already gone, slipping down the path as though the night swallowed her. No one admits to seeing her leave. No footsteps mark the sand. You sit beside the pearl, uneasy as the fire dies down. The villagers scatter to their homes, muttering. And in the silence, the pearl hums, low, steady, and, just for a heartbeat, almost sorrowful.
By the fourth night, you notice something strange. The tide doesn't stop where it usually does. It creeps higher along the sand, soaking driftwood that's never touched water, lapping at stones that normally sit bone dry. The sea has always kept its boundaries, predictable as hunger, but now it seems to be stretching, testing how far it can reach. You stand at the shore with the pearl in your hands, its glow spilling across the dark water like a path. The hum is louder than before, steady but insistent, as though calling to something unseen. Behind you, the villagers murmur nervously. One man says it's nothing, just the moon playing tricks. Another swears it's the sign of a storm. A woman mutters that the sea is listening, waiting for the pearl's next verse. Everyone pretends they aren't afraid, which is how you know they're terrified. You hold the pearl tighter, and the tide stills for a moment, as though the sea itself is watching you. It's absurd, really, you, a fisherman who can barely keep his nets untangled, standing nose to nose with an ocean like it's some neighbor you're about to argue over a fence. Historical fact. Unusual tides have been feared and celebrated for centuries. The ancient Greeks saw them as moods of Poseidon. In parts of Polynesia, sudden sea rise was read as the breath of great sea spirits. And in medieval Europe, villagers sometimes dragged church bells to the shore, ringing them to calm the waters. Scholars still argue whether these rituals were symbolic or if communities truly believed bells could hold back the tide. You look down at the pearl, its glow reflecting in your tired eyes. You're the one it's listening to, aren't you? You whisper. The hum deepens, vibrating up your arms, and you realize you're not wrong. Quirky tidbit. In Icelandic sagas, there are tales of songstones dropped into fjords to calm whirlpools or lure fish. Some folklorists think this was a way of explaining natural acoustics, how sound travels eerily across water at night. Others shrug and say, or maybe people just had chatty rocks. The tide creeps forward again, licking at your boots. It isn't violent, but it isn't ordinary either. A child yelps and clings to her mother's skirt. The villagers begin to retreat uphill. You remain standing, pearl in hand, unsure whether you're meant to command the sea or answer it. The hum rises once more, steady, unshaken, until it feels as though the whole shoreline is vibrating with song. The air tastes of salt and something sharper, like iron. You close your eyes, bracing yourself. And then, just as suddenly as it rose, the tide falls back. The water withdraws, pulling into itself, leaving the shore wet but safe. The villagers exhale all at once, as though they've been holding their breath for hours. They look at you not with envy this time, but with a wary respect, or perhaps suspicion. A man mutters, "The sea listens to him now." Another shakes his head, or it listens to that thing he holds. You clutch the pearl, its glow warm against your chest, and wonder which one of them is right.
Lantern light sways in the breeze as the village gathers in the square, eyes darting toward the pearl in your hands like moths that can't decide whether to approach or flee. You sit on a low wooden stool, the weight of the sea's attention still clinging to you. For the first time in your life, you feel like the center of a story. And let's be honest, you didn't exactly sign up for this role. You were supposed to be a fisherman with sore shoulders, not a man who negotiates with tides. The pearl glows faintly, as though aware that the whole village is watching. Someone suggests locking it in the church chest. Another says it should be thrown into the deep marsh, where no one will find it. A third whispers about hiding it under the floorboards, though you suspect that's just an elaborate plan to claim it later. You catch yourself thinking of simpler choices, like what to eat for dinner, or whether you should patch the hole in your net. But this, hide it, share it, or return it. It feels like the kind of decision that ripples far past you, like a pebble tossed into a still pond. The lantern light flickers across the villagers' faces. You notice how fear pulls at their mouths, how curiosity sharpens their eyes. Someone mutters, "It sings to him, but what if one day it stops?" Another counters, "And what if it begins to sing to the sea instead?" Folklore fact: pearls have long been tangled in human ideas of fate. In China, they were thought to be dragons' tears, dropped during battles in the sky. In Persian myth, they were called moon drops, fallen into the ocean on clear nights. Some traditions treat them as symbols of purity. Others warn that pearls taken without respect invite storms. Scholars debate whether these beliefs arose independently or spread through trade routes along with the pearls themselves. You feel the pearl's hum rise faintly in your palm, like a cat deciding whether to purr. That's when an elder steps forward, lantern shaking in her hand. "Keep it if you must," she says, her voice like the creak of old wood. "But remember, a song that belongs to the sea will always find its way back to water." Quirky tidbit: in some Irish tales, fishermen swore that objects found at sea never truly belonged to them. Even boots, if claimed from the waves, had to be left at crossroads after a week, Or else, as the stories go, the sea will come knocking at your door, wanting its boots back. Folklorists aren't sure if this was a real belief or just fishermen finding a way to get rid of soggy footwear without guilt. The crowd disperses slowly, leaving you alone with the pearl. The lantern at your side burns low, its circle of light shrinking until the night presses close. You turn the pearl in your hand. Its glow shivers as though waiting for your answer. Do you tuck it into the chest, safe but silent? Do you carry it back to the ocean, hoping the sea releases you from its gaze? Or do you keep it, knowing full well that the song has already wrapped itself around your heartbeat? The lantern flame sputters once, then steadies. You realize there's no escaping this choice. The pearl hums, almost amused, as though it has all the time in the world. You, however, feel the weight of dawn creeping closer, pressing for a decision.
The pearl rests in your palm as if it were alive, breathing faintly against your skin. You lean closer, lantern smoke curling into the night, and for the first time the hum sharpens into words. Words not spoken aloud, but whispered inside your mind, like someone singing through the bones of your skull. The song tells you of a spirit bound long ago, sealed inside this pearl when the world was younger and God still argued over who got which stretch of coastline. The voice is gentle, weary, but also sly, like a storyteller who's told this tale too many times and still isn't sure anyone's listening. You hold more than a jewel, the pearl sings. You cradle a voice taken from the river. You blink. A river? Not the ocean? That's like finding out your mysterious glowing stone is less Poseidon's personal voicemail and more misplaced freshwater playlist. But the song insists. This spirit once belonged to a wide, meandering river, worshipped by villages now long forgotten. When the people stopped singing to it, a jealous sea god bound the spirit into a pearl, stealing its voice and silencing its waters. Historical fact. Across the ancient world, rivers were seen as living deities. The Nile was worshipped in Egypt as a god with both benevolent and dangerous moods. The Ganges in India is still revered as a goddess, said to purify those who touch her waters. Greek myth names river gods like Scamander and Alpheus, each with their own temperaments. Scholars debate whether these figures were believed to be literal divine beings or symbolic personifications of the waters communities depended on. You ask silently, "Why me?" The pearl hums back, "Because you listened." And there it is, the cosmic joke. You're chosen not because you're brave or special or particularly handsome, though you'd argue you look pretty good in moonlight, but because you didn't toss the glowing rock back into the sea like a sensible person would. Quirky tidbit. In Japanese folklore, there are tales of ningyo no koi, fish with human voices, captured and trapped in shells or jars. Their songs brought luck or ruin, depending on how they were treated. Some scholars think this reflects the eerie sounds whales and dolphins make underwater, which can carry for miles and sound uncannily like music. Others think it was just another way of saying, don't mess with things that hum mysteriously. The pearl's voice softens, almost like a lullaby now. Return me to the river. Set me where reeds bend and moonlight falls. Then my song will be whole again. You feel the tide pull faintly at your ankles, as though even the sea is listening to this request. The villagers' doubts echo in your mind. Hide it, share it, or return it. But now a fourth choice emerges. Fulfill the song's wish and see if the world feels lighter. The pearl glows warmer, waiting, and for the first time you realize it isn't just an object, it's a companion, lonely, patient, but insistent.
and it has a destination in mind. You lift your eyes to the dark horizon where the river mouth glimmers faintly, silver in the moonlight. The decision presses down on you with the weight of tides. Somewhere far inland, reeds sway, and an ancient voice waits to breathe again.
At dawn, you sling your net over one shoulder, the pearl tucked close against your chest. The villagers watch you from doorways, silent as statues. Nobody tries to stop you, but nobody offers to come along either. It's the kind of look people give when they're torn between respect and hoping you don't bring any of this trouble back with you. You follow the riverbank upstream, where the salt fades into fresh water and reeds grow thick along the edges. The air smells different here, less briny, more green, like wet moss and crushed leaves. The pearl hums softly, as though it recognizes the change, as if it's sniffing the air the way a dog does when you drive past a familiar park. Your steps crunch along the pebbled path. Birds call overhead, though they keep their distance from you and the glow in your pocket. Every so often you catch the pearl's song shifting, sometimes low and mournful, sometimes light and lilting, like it's remembering a tune it once knew by heart. Historical fact: rivers were once the highways of civilization. Settlements bloomed along their banks, and many cultures believed the river itself carried messages between the human and divine. In Mesopotamia, the Euphrates was said to flow from the god's garden. In Norse sagas, rivers often formed boundaries between worlds. Some scholars argued that the personification of rivers as gods was less metaphorical and more a recognition of their unpredictable life or death power. You stop at midday, resting beneath a willow tree. The pearl glows faintly in the dappled shade, and for a moment you could swear it sighs. You chuckle. "Don't get impatient," you mutter. "You're not the one walking on blistered feet." Quirky tidbit: in certain Russian folk tales, pearls were said to fall from the eyes of mermaids whenever they laughed. Imagine that, tears of joy turning into treasure. Folklorists debate whether this image comes from literal pearls or from the glimmer of water droplets in moonlight, mistaken for something precious. Either way, it proves that humans will find a way to turn even imaginary crying into an economy. The road winds on, narrower, softer beneath your steps as you move deeper inland. Fields give way to marshland, where the air grows heavy with dragonflies and the buzzing of unseen insects. The pearl's glow strengthens, pulsing with each bend of the river. You can't help but feel as though you're not walking alone anymore. The song has grown steadier, wrapping itself around your thoughts. Sometimes it feels like encouragement, other times like a reminder. Not much farther, keep moving, you're almost there. When night falls, you make camp by the water's edge. The river gurgles softly, like it's trying to join the pearl in its song. You lie back on damp grass, staring at the stars, wondering if you're just a tired fisherman with too much imagination, or if you've truly stepped into one of those old stories elders used to mutter by firelight. You drift off with the pearl warm against your chest, its hum syncing with your heartbeat, steady and sure. And you know, with a certainty you can't explain, that the journey is leading you somewhere sacred.
By the time you reach the wide bend of the river, the air feels different, thicker, almost reverent, as though you've stepped into the breath of something ancient. Reeds rise taller than your head, swaying with a rhythm that doesn't quite match the breeze. You push through them, damp stalks brushing against your arms, until you stumble upon a clearing where stone juts out of the marsh. There it is, a forgotten shrine. Half drowned, leaning, its steps crooked with moss. Vines crawl up the pillars, swallowing the carved figures etched into the rock. Some look like fish,
others like curling waves, their faces blurred by centuries of water and wind. The pearl glows brighter in your hand, its hum now a steady tone, as if you've brought it home to a place it never stopped longing for. You stand at the threshold, heart thudding in your chest. Shrines like this aren't unusual in old tales. Every river worth its salt, or lack thereof, had one. Yet seeing one in reality, abandoned but not forgotten, feels like trespassing in a memory. Historical fact. Shrines to river spirits once dotted landscapes across the world. In ancient Rome, altars to river deities like Tiberinus were common, where offerings of wine or bread were left to keep waters calm. In parts of Africa, libations are still poured into rivers to honor the spirits within. Scholars debate how many of these shrines were places of actual worship versus convenient gathering points for communities dependent on the river. The pearl pulses in your hand, so bright now it casts shadows across the water. You step inside the shrine, water sloshing softly around your ankles. The air smells of wet stone and faint smoke, as though offerings still linger even after centuries. You set the pearl on the altar. Its song swells, filling the air with vibrations that make the reeds outside bow as if in worship. The shrine seems to breathe, its cracked stones trembling faintly beneath your palms. Quirky tidbit. In some Lithuanian folk tales, pearls were said to be the crystallized laughter of drowned maidens, hidden in riverbeds until someone worthy retrieved them. Scholars aren't sure whether these tales were moral lessons against swimming alone, or simply proof that humans will romanticize even tragedy. Either way, it fits uncomfortably well with the hum in your hand. The pearl's voice sharpens into clarity, no longer a whisper, but a steady song that speaks through the very air. You've brought me home, but release is not yet given. You swallow hard. Of course it wasn't going to be as simple as dropping the pearl off like a late library book. The shrine's cracked walls flicker with pale light, the carvings shifting in the glow as if they're watching. The river outside gurgles louder, impatient, waiting for the next verse of this strange bargain. You realize the pearl hasn't asked only for a journey, it has asked for a ritual. And now, under the moon's silver gaze, the true choice lies ahead, whether you can give up what you've carried so far, or whether the river will have to take it back for itself. Moonlight spills across the altar, painting the stone in silver. You set the pearl down carefully, almost reluctantly, as though placing a child into a cradle you know you'll never lift again. The hum deepens, filling the shrine until the water at your ankles ripples like it's listening. You take a breath and speak. Not grand words, not anything rehearsed, just the kind of plain honesty you're used to. I found you by chance. You sang to me. Now I return you to where you belong. The pearl brightens, then pulses with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Outside, the reeds sway in unison though the air is still. You feel the pull of the river around you, insistent, like hands guiding you toward its current. Historical fact. In many cultures, releasing sacred objects back to water was seen as the ultimate offering. Bronze Age communities across Europe cast weapons and jewelry into lakes, believing the act restored balance with the divine. Archaeologists still find swords sunk deliberately in riverbeds, their purpose debated. Were they sacrifices or symbols of endings? Scholars remain divided. You lift the pearl one last time, walk to the shrine's edge, and kneel at the water. The river reflects the moon in broken shards, trembling with anticipation. The pearl hums against your palm, louder, brighter, then suddenly still, as though waiting for your decision. Quirky tidbit. In Appalachian folklore, it's said that
If you whisper your burdens into a stone and drop it into running water, the current will carry your troubles away. Of course, skeptics argue it's just a good excuse for skipping rocks. Still, the idea lingers that rivers listen more closely than people do. You lean forward and release the pearl into the current. For a heartbeat, it rests on the surface, glowing like a lantern bobbing in the dark. Then it sinks gracefully, leaving ripples that shimmer silver before fading. The river answers immediately. The water calms, glassy and still. The reeds bow low as though in thanks. The shrine exhales a sigh through its cracks, and the hum vanishes into silence, so complete it's almost deafening. You kneel there, hands damp, chest hollow. Part of you expected a grand finale, thunder, or a spirit bursting free with trumpets. Instead, you're left with quiet. But the quiet feels lighter, like something heavy has finally let go. You chuckle softly, shaking your head. All this fuss, and in the end, it was just letting go. And yet, even as you rise to your feet, you feel it. The pearl may be gone, but something remains. A faint shimmer in the air, a hush in the reeds, as if the river has marked you, not with treasure, but with memory.
The shrine is quiet now, the kind of quiet that feels earned. You step back from the water's edge, wiping your damp hands on your trousers, half expecting the pearl to come bobbing back up like a stubborn cork. But it doesn't. It's gone, carried beneath the reeds, singing where only the river can hear. When you finally make your way downstream, the night air feels lighter, as though someone has wrung the tension out of it. The path bends away from the shrine, and the moon slides behind a cloud. You walk slowly, your boots squelching in the mud, mind still buzzing with the absence of that hum you'd grown used to. By the time dawn bruises the horizon, you find yourself back at the village shore. The sea lies calm, not a ripple out of place, as though it too has been soothed. Your neighbors gather silently, curious whether you've returned empty-handed or cursed. You open your net, ready to prove that you've come back with nothing. Instead, you freeze. The rough twine has been mended, not with ordinary cord, but with threads of silver, woven delicately as though by unseen hands. They shimmer faintly in the morning light, stronger than rope, soft as moonlight. You lift the net, and the villagers gasp. One brave soul whispers, "The river gave him a gift." Another mutters, "Or maybe it just didn't want him fishing with holes anymore." You laugh because, honestly, that sounds exactly like something a river would do, equal parts generous and practical. Historical fact: silver thread has long been tied to folklore. In medieval Europe, it was said to ward off misfortune, sometimes stitched into clothes or nets to bring luck. In Hindu tradition, sacred threads of silver were occasionally offered to rivers as a sign of devotion. Scholars debate whether these practices arose from genuine ritual or from silver's durability against tarnish. Quirky tidbit: in some Scandinavian folk tales, nets mended by river maidens were said to never tangle. Fishermen who owned them boasted of always hauling in more than their neighbors, though strangely, the tales also warn that such luck never lasted beyond 3 seasons. Folklorists wonder if that's because jealous neighbors simply cut the nets when no one was looking. You run your fingers across the silver strands, marveling at their strength. It's not treasure in the usual sense, not gold coins or jewels, but something far more useful. And in a fisherman's world, usefulness is as good as wealth. The villagers still eye you cautiously, as though you've come back different, and maybe you have. But when you stand at the shore, silver-mended net in hand, the sea looks less like a rival and more like a partner.
You smile faintly, feeling the pearl's absence and presence at once. It's gone from your hands, yet woven into your days. A trade, a gift, a quiet bargain. The silver threads gleam faintly in the early light as you walk down to the shore. The sea is calm, the horizon stretching out in a line so steady it feels like the world is holding its breath. You cast the net, watching it arc through the air and land with a gentle splash. For the first time in weeks, there's no hum, no glow, only the sound of water lapping at your boots. And it's enough. The net sinks, weighted by stones, then rises again with your steady pull. When you haul it in, it's heavy, fish wriggling silver in the dawn, glinting almost like the pearl itself. You laugh quietly, the sound surprising even you, because it feels like relief. The net does its work, the silver threads holding fast, strong and smooth. The river spirit may be gone, but its gift is with you now, woven into your daily life. Behind you, villagers gather in small knots. Their whispers are softer than before, less suspicion, more curiosity, maybe even respect. A child points at the glimmering net, wide-eyed. An elder nods once, as though to say, "Yes, sometimes the sea takes, but sometimes it returns." Historical fact. In old fishing communities, there was a belief that every bountiful catch carried a cost. Fishermen left the first fish caught back in the water, a tithe to the unseen powers of the deep. Scholars debate whether this was superstition or simply a practical way to maintain balance in dwindling stocks. Either way, it carried a lesson: take, but also return. You think of the pearl's song, its weary, patient voice. You wonder if the river spirit is still singing somewhere beneath the reeds, freed at last. Perhaps the sea itself listens differently now, remembering the bargain struck in moonlight. Quirky tidbit. In some Inuit stories, fishermen claimed their nets sometimes shimmered with sea light, strands glowing faintly after an encounter with spirits of the deep. Was it phosphorescent algae, trick of the moon, or a tall tale to explain why some men came home with more fish than others? Folklorists shrug, but the image lingers, a net touched by the otherworldly. You stand with your silver-mended net, the fish flopping at your feet, and realize something simple but profound. The story is over, yet life continues. You're not cursed, not blessed, not transformed into a hero sung in taverns. You're just a fisherman again, one with lighter hands and a quieter heart. And in the hush of the dawn, you feel grateful.
The shore quiets as the day stretches its arms awake. The villagers drift back to their homes, footsteps fading on the sand, while the sea continues its soft rhythm, like a heartbeat slowed for rest. You coil your net carefully, its silver strands catching the light just enough to remind you of the journey, though not so much as to demand you relive it. The air is gentler now, heavy with salt, but softened by the warmth of the rising sun. You breathe it in slowly, letting each exhale carry away what weight lingers on your shoulders. The pearl is gone, but its absence is no longer a hollow. It is a space filled with calm, a space where silence hums more gently than song. You walk home with steady steps, no longer hurried by questions or fears. The path feels familiar, though changed, as though every pebble remembers the sound of your boots and welcomes them back. At your door, you pause and look once more at the horizon. The sea glimmers faintly, indifferent yet watchful, as if it too has settled into its own kind of peace. Inside, the air is cool, the shadows kind. You set your net down, close the door, and allow yourself the quiet pleasure of stillness. No more choices pressing down, no more voices rising from the deep. Just the soft hum of your own breath, steady and slow. As your eyes close, you imagine the pearl resting in the river's dark heart, its song finally at home, drifting into silence. And you here, at the edge of the sea, resting in the simple rhythm of life returned. So let the tide move as it always has. Let the nets cast, the mornings rise, and the nights fall gently. And let sleep take you, soft as moonlight, soft as moonlight, soft as